All right, Denise, we live?
Yes, we
All
are.
right, beautiful. All right, everybody. It is November 19th, 2025, and we are here at the Arena District Steering Committee. Y'all have been doing great work and really excited about everything we've got today. We'll approve the minutes. We're going to talk about the scope of work for the development facilitator. Ilka will talk about kind of the editing job that went into that. And then we'll get our regularly scheduled Q3 reports for the Classic Center Arena bonds. And then we'll determine when we're going to be gathering again and talk about kind of what we're going to do at that point. I would entertain a motion from the body for approval of the Wednesday, October 16th, 2025 minutes.
Motion.
All right, I got a motion from Tress. Is there a second? Second. I got a second from John. All right, any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, hearing none, minutes are approved. All right, I'm gonna turn it over to Ilka to talk about the scope of work for our now selected development facilitator.
All right, in front of you, you will see the staple document, it's the scope of work. Accenture put together a draft scope of work, and Judd and Blake Felton, who is an attorney who is of counsel to the Unified Government for Public-Private Partnerships. We met and went through this carefully, made some edits. So what you see in front of you is the result of that conversation between Judd and Blake, and I wanted to let y'all kind of go through it, soak it in. Any questions?
Yeah, walk us through it. That'd be.
Yeah, you want to go through?
Yeah.
All right, let's do it. So phase one will be months 1 through 3. The steering committee will work on governance protocols, decision-making frameworks. There'll be some bi-weekly briefings and approvals to get things rolling. They'll have a log and decisions, just they'll be documenting everything as we go through. And then they'll help us begin going through the due diligence and data gathering phase. They have a lot of this information already, market studies, some of the environmental documents related to the land in the district, bond documents, information about the tag, utility maps, water and sewer capacity, zoning requirements for the area, who owns which parcels, things like that, just giving them kind of the foundation of it. A lot of that is already in the Dropbox that was shared during the RFQ process, but we've got a few more data gathering things that we'll gather up and put in there, so they'll have it. They'll take a look if there are any things that need some updates or any new information that'll be required to proceed. The next step will be stakeholder engagement, which this committee will help with, and do some preliminary sort of workshopping and input gathering with ACC Gov, UGA, Classic Center Authority, the DDA, and other key stakeholders, having some public open houses with feedback sessions. Stakeholder maps and engagement will help to guide how that works and when it happens and where and who. And then the planning and architectural firm will work on that procurement method as that kind of moves forward. And through all of that process, there'll be a framework and a parcel strategy. So as several of the different presentations mentioned, you know, there's all that land there, and there's different potentials for the area. You know, a couple that we've mentioned. You know, parking is one, multifamily is probably going to be one, hospitality is going to be one, retail is going to be one. So part of that piece will be looking at different sub-development parcels within there, looking at whether those will be fee simple, whether they'll be air leases, ground leases, and what the sort of phasing of those things will be, especially as it pertains to the bond and bond revenues that are needed and the timing of that. Also looking at design workshops and charrettes with some of the key stakeholders to come up with some concepts for that area. You can see some of their milestones that'll show what they're going to be doing within there. So planning workshops, strategy approvals, and conceptual site plans that then they can use to look at some more site-specific feasibility things, market condition, demand analysis. Some of that they already have through like the hotel studies and things like that, but they'll take a look at it for each sort of product. or part of the site, and product or use that they're thinking of using. Cross-development site design, because there's also opportunity for, some collaboration between different uses on the site and different developers that might be doing that. Looking at the overall financial modeling and what that means for highest and best use, for the bond repayment, capital stack, how that can be planned out for each parcel. You can see some of the milestones that they've identified for that piece. Refining the conceptual site plan, looking at market validation, coordinating infrastructure and what that might look like when there's different potential developments that'll be occurring possibly at the same point in time, and kind of what that looks like. The public-private partnership, delivery options, preliminary capital stack, and funding strategies, what could be brought to bear, I guess would be a good way to summarize that.
Do you think that there is room or any potential in this phase to suggest engaging local talent, architecture, or concepts? Just people that are here in the community that see this every single day, that are very familiar with our town.
Yeah, I think we can discuss that definitely with Accenture, because a piece of it is that step up under phase 1C, which is to engage a planning and an architectural firm. So I think that procurement method that'll be the space for that.
And I thought that was one of the strengths of this company.
Yeah.
Was their
Yeah.
familiarity.
She was architect at the university.
And
One-
noted, love for the architectural look and making sure it had our character down there. I thought that was a key.
Yeah.
Thing.
That makes sense, especially because downtown has been built at different times, so you have different types of architecture.
Yeah.
It doesn't look like it all landed at one time, which is kind of gives it character. So looking at phase 3 on page 2, the next step will be beginning to solicit developers for the conceptuals, and the sort of the phasing that's been worked on in phases 1 and 2. So that'll look like putting together and finalizing RFP documents for specific site developers for the different parts of the site and the different, uses, say multifamily or hospitality. Looking at the legal and permitting team, and then doing RFQs or RFPs, depending on the parcel or the use that is identified, and then negotiating ground leases, maybe a fee simple sale, any incentives, shared cost agreements, finalizing the developer agreements once the developer's gone through the RFQ/RFP process and been selected, and the phasing plans. And you can see some of those milestones there for that part of it. And then phase 4 will be, looking at construction, shared infrastructure, and then bigger picture, branding, mobility, digital systems integration. That can be, you can see it down under, some of the digital systems can be like parking and mobility, and down the last section where they talk about innovation and smart district integration, with just infrastructure across the parcels, wayfinding, how people find their way around, how safety is managed, how mobility is handled within the parcel. And then you can also see down in there, just looking at some of the financial instruments that could be brought to bear on the project.
Questions,
Um,
Allison?
On the start, I got your little times for each phase. Are we talking month 1 is January?
Well, we still need
What do
to
you
go-
think is the,
We still need to go through the contracting process. So the next step after this is it goes back to Accenture. Accenture will share some pricing, and then the negotiation process will occur with the attorneys and the purchasing department. So I don't know if January, I
is
just
that too
don't know.
ambitious? More like,
I have not gone through a lot of RFP processes, so I'm probably not the best person to answer, but I would
Okay.
say early January would probably be very ambitious, just thinking
Spring-
Thanksgiving.
spring,
We could probably bounce that off Blake Sharpton, who's real familiar with this terrain, and just kind of see for him kind of what that normal timeline looks like.
And
I would imagine that spring would be the latest that you.
Yeah, winter, spring would be what we say month one,
That's what I would think.
right?
Yeah.
Because of what
It'll
has
take
to
us a
be
while
done
to
to nail.
analyze the pricing and then go through the contract process, yeah.
But I think you got motivated parties, so that's.
We don't even know what their cost is yet.
We don't
Right.
know yet,
'Cause
because
the-
the
So, I
scope
mean,
of
I
work.
think that's kind of a big part of it. And I think we're doing, having a lot of discussions when we don't even know the price. We can
That's
figure
right.
that out before we.
That'll be our next meeting. Once we, once we finalize this, hopefully in this meeting, this will go back to Accenture. Accenture will share some pricing. We'll go back and forth with,
Well, but-
back and forth on that, and then we can look at that for the next meeting of this group.
I think they've got a lot of experience in this type of project, we don't. So this could be our idea of scope of work, but they might have something totally different, because we've never been through anything.
So this is based on a sorry, I should have shared that with y'all. This is based on a document they sent us.
Okay.
So this was their draft, and then Judd and Blake Shelton, who is of counsel for public-private partnerships for the unified government for several
Okay.
different projects. The three of us went through it with a fine tooth comb and
Okay.
tweaked and edited. So it is based, this won't be unfamiliar to Accenture. It's based on something they put together for us.
All right, and sorry, sometimes.
No,
the
you're good.
detail gets me, when are we doing the master plan? Is that in phase one?
I'm gonna look down in here.
So, at the end of the phase one is this parcel strategy approval, refined conceptual site plans. But my sense is that that's sort of
Okay.
the draft master plan.
Yeah, if you look under phase two, site-specific visioning, we'll
I
have to
think we
ask.
ought to have that written in there somewhere, master plan.
Or at least which one of these elements are getting us to I mean, they all are getting us to that, but knowing what am I hearing you say, which one of the phases is the master plan coming out?
That's a great question.
The
And one
master
of,
plan, and then we need to know the feasibility. Not, well, their feasibility of their financial piece, but the master plan and how, because the goal is to create something, master plan, but also be able to make these bond payments.
yeah,
And I'm looking back at the notes, they're aware of the financial situation.
they are.
So we need to make sure we're not, 12 months down the road, and then we realize we're still not gonna be able to make bond payments. That needs to be baked in early on.
Yeah, so
Just
under
the
due
piece.
diligence,
Right.
that was one of the items that we added when we went through and reviewed, which was bond documents. So they're fully aware of, so they have all the bond documents and they're aware of what the bond requirements are and how important it will be from a feasibility perspective and from a parcel planning perspective, that what is planned for those parcels will assist with repaying the commitments that have been made as far as the bonds. Does that help?
And doable engineering wise and architecturally as well.
So that's part of phase one, you think?
So that's part of due diligence will be looking at the bond documents and then taking that where you can see district framework and parcel strategy.
But John, you kind
Gee,
of call
and then
out,
down
like,
into-
here's where we've got a
Yeah.
master plan, or at least a
Yeah.
draft of a
Yeah.
master
And I
plan.
think in layman's terms, master plan,
Is D.
feasibility, how we're gonna pay for this. Because that's what while we're in this, is trying to figure out that.
So D is kind of also the master plan focus, right?
Yeah.
That D there.
I read that as a
Because
sort
I remember that
draft.
one of the presentations suggested that it might be more cost effective not to master plan it, to have the developers do the master plan. So we'll have, I don't remember if that was Accenture or, it wasn't. Okay.
I'm looking at
That's a
their
good
stuff.
question.
Their second step was create a master plan
Okay.
for feasibility analysis.
Got
And
it.
then step 3 was selection process for development.
Okay.
One of the things I remember well from this trip we took, was it a year ago that we visited the World Congress Center? Is that they said, we've sort of got this plan for the whole campus, but recognize there's gonna be some sort of evolution as time goes on. My sense is that that's probably the approach we'll have here. We'll have like, hey, here's a draft, but once we get into the details of, well, is the building 7 stories or 8 stories? Is the rooftop terrace facing the east or the north? I mean, I think those things will probably evolve.
Right. And on that note, I had two things that I wanted to, I don't know if they get included or they might be included because of how you guys have worked this, but I like the idea of us having early improvements on the existing hardscape so that there's enhancements being visualized or executed and visual, welcoming some of that, making the back seem like the front and combine the two, getting some of the unity visually and that being an earlier thing while some of the longer term stuff is underway. And then the second idea, I'm not sure where that would fit in, is that and it might be part of the feasibility. It seems to me the multimodal area that's there is either gonna have to be temporarily relocated for construction or be assessed in the big scheme of our transit plan. Does it really need to be there and does it really need to be that big? If we're gonna have our satellite, I think we planned 3 different transit hubs out of downtown and it seems to me we should be incorporating that long-term planning to not save this huge area. If it can also be an improvement. there.
That's great
So does
feedback.
that, is
Yeah.
is
I
that
think
part of
I'll
the
put that-
feasibility?
I think what I'll do is I'll ask them to insert it under phase 2 where it says shared infrastructure coordination, because the
That's
way
it.
transportation is, it's part of the infrastructure over
It
there.
is, and it just seems to me that, cost-wise, making sure we're not saving that space specifically. And it just
What if
allows.
but there were options that people talked about building over that. Would that be part of a master plan that would?
Is that rail still used?
So the rail is still
The easement has to
an
be,
active rail under the National
Right.
Transportation Surface Board. And so up until East Broad Street, it at least has to be retained for potential future use. At this moment that we're having this conversation right now, the future may be different.
Yeah.
But at least at the moment, it's got to be open. We've basically got, the Royal Classic Center does have sort of air rights over that. But I do think that in this engagement, I think sort of weaving together everything that folks have said, engagement with transit in particular,
Yeah.
around like, okay, what pieces could be cantilevered over?
Yeah.
Is there any modification in the format or scale of that facility? All of those, I think, need to be open questions that are explored in the design process.
yeah,
Well,
and just to finish up, similar to work that's done with, from my being on the East Blast Committee and the way and the cheaper it was to build a school, renovate a school when the students aren't there, right? Relocate, and I'm thinking that transit, if a version of it stays there, it still can't be active during all the construction type thing. And so in having a temporary version and looking at that, could it also be, it might be a new version of where it is, the temporary part, if this is all coming about to where the transit, what do we call this, a satellite? What is the hubs I'm thinking about that we've got designed for
The
each side?
satellite centers,
Yeah.
kind of with one on Lexington, one somewhere in the.
So the big picture is, instead of everything coming back into here and going back out, that the routes would be faster and would be more frequent because of, you could go around west side or east side. Anyway, and with that in mind, it likely doesn't have to be as big. But again, that's part of that. What area did you say that was under?
So one
Infrastructure?
section is under phase 2 where it says shared infrastructure coordination. Right
Yeah.
now it says utilities, mobility, public realm. And then it's also on the bottom of page 2 where it says technical coordination, centralized review of infrastructure, mobility and public realm. And so I just added transit multimodal and also parking and mobility strategy.
Right.
And I think even
See
as
where it
early,
says multimodal access under the second bullet point under parking and mobility strategy.
Because I think the mobility in my mind are the visitors and the people who are coming destination in mind for the events, right? And then the transit station isn't necessarily people, they're using the transit, but not necessarily the amenities that we're planning for. So by you separating that being mobility and parking versus,
We can add the
Community
word
transit.
transit in there, yeah.
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 okay, Thanks.
just as a reiteration, I mean, like, our job, right, is to try to find, is to help develop a plan for development that will go to help pay off the bond, whose the proceeds will help pay off the bonds. And you want that development to be the best opportunity for the community. But our job is to pay off the bonds, right?
Yeah,
So if the possibility of the multimodal unit, I mean, that's a key, that's a lot of dollars right there. That's
and certainly, I think future's unwritten about exactly what that looks like. But I do think probably the earlier we infuse that into the conversation, the better. I mean, even as I think about stakeholder engagement under phase one, I think explicitly saying, hey, we want you to have conversations with transit. So I guess as our staff liaison, Ilka, if you could just sort of, herd the cats there and say, hey, developer, hey, transit, let's be very open about looking at what the options are. I mean, does that satisfy everybody?
Sure. And so my second question is so what is our role after going forward?
Well, y'all will be part of this stakeholder process.
whole
You'll
process,
basically
the whole
be,
process.
the Accenture will be reporting back to you as these steps occur.
Okay. Thank you.
And y'all will be assisting with like, who are the stakeholders? Who
Okay.
should be at the table? Who needs to be involved? That sort of thing. And y'all will continue to be monitoring the bonds.
So is there an articulated end to this committee or to this group, to the steering?
I hope not.
Is there an articulated end to this steering committee?
No, from the grave, you'll be serving.
All the criticism will come back to us from the community.
I got that. So,
Yeah, I would say that I think our responsibilities winnow over time.
okay,
And so really sort of post-construction, it really is just quarterly reports.
okay, thank you.
Yeah, we don't have to go to all these meetings.
Break
They
ground.
tell us how those meetings went.
Any other questions about the scope of work?
Am I allowed?
Paul, what you got?
Two things that I would love to get woven in. One is, as they're developing the master plan, sorry, I just came back from a dentist, so. But, if they would think through how do deliveries come in and go out? Because I envision this is gonna be a highly densified area. And really thinking through how the food deliveries get in and other such things.
Operations and logistics.
I think is gonna be important. And then the other thing I think is very important is thinking about event parking, because it is significantly different than residential or retail parking. Specifically, when you let 7,000 or 10,000 people go at the same time, very difficult to have parking deck that's been thought through in advance. And so I just would pray that that gets woven in here somewhere. And then I see where you put down ground lease and or fee simple for the land. I think somewhere in here, we need to look at how much are we gonna get back over time? How does that relate to the payment of the bonds? In other words, you could get $2 million for a acre of land. I'm just making numbers up. But if you got a long-term land lease, over time, you would get far more than the $2 million, and it would coincide with the payments of the bonds. So those things are very different, and I would imagine at some point Accenture is gonna place values on these various parcels based on what they're seeing in the master plan. Is that, I haven't read the document.
I think that's part of the
Yeah.
financial modeling that they're talking about. Yeah, it's just thinking about different models and what they might look like and what they mean for the bond and what they mean longer term and that sort of thing.
Well, that goes back to John's point of having a master plan and maybe figuring out the more valuable pieces and pulling the trigger, it's like parking or whatever, how that,
Yeah,
they know what they need to do.
Because the
That's what they
parking would be a way to generate revenue.
Just to get it going,
Yeah.
and then you address the other,
Yeah.
demand higher.
Yeah, and Paul,
Yeah.
to that the details that you just shared, I think that this group it would express their experience in that, and it's not just supplies coming in, trash going out.
That's
I
right.
mean, and it's all that, I think that they,
The way that it's been
yeah.
developed, you know, kind of thing.
and which one's the volume of that, but I think that these guys are, will be on top of that.
Those are good points though, and I've added them in just to consider like the existing operations and then the flows related to event parking versus hotel parking or multifamily parking and that sort of thing.
I'm saying parking, but it's also today, you know, we do wrestling and it's 14 tractor trailers, get in and get out. And they've got to be staged somewhere if they don't all fit. So while we're looking at all of it, kind of thinking through that as well. They don't have to be right there all the time, but they've got
They've
to
got to approach that loading dock.
They gotta stay somewhere till the event is over.
Yes.
Anything else that you want to see integrated here? I think this has been good conversation, and those practicalities are really important, you know, right? This is not a static environment where everybody's just frozen in place and hanging out and you're looking at a pretty picture. It's a real dynamic environment where things are coming and going all the time. So that's helpful.
Thank you, Ilka.
Thanks, everybody, for your feedback. I think
Good
it's-
job, Ilka. Yep. All right, everybody ready to move on to financials?
Put my glasses on. This one.
All right, everybody get out your magnifying glass.
Not a bad luck.
I mean, everybody sort of consents, I think, in general terms to sort of edits that we discussed, and I know Ilka's taken notes on that, so. But you're good?
You need a motion to approve the scope of work as discussed.
Generally a motion with the amendments that have been prescribed.
So moved.
Well, we'll talk about next steps with extension.
Yeah, we will. Yeah, right after financials, that's the last thing on the agenda.
Yes.
So motion, that was a motion for what you said.
All right, to accept as described with these amendments. There's a second. All right, second from David. All right, all in favor? Any opposed? All right. All right, you're the man.
Right,
Thanks, Jamie.
thank you, happy to be here. All right, so there are two documents, and I'm glad you were able to print this out so large, it's much better than last time. And I'm glad that we were able to get this one worked out.
If I'd known we had this big paper, I would have
That's great.
printed the overview on the big paper too, but.
All good. Okay, so there's two documents, one is the summary, the other is the detail, so please feel free to peruse the detail at your leisure. Wonderful evening when you go home. But we'll go over the summary for the sake of time. So this summary, what we have here is the different columns represent different fiscal years, fiscal year being July 1st to June 30th. This first column obviously is the descriptions of each of the rows. So this first column, the actuals FY25, that's our last year financial statements that ended June 30th, 2025. So about 4 or 5 months ago. So overall, total gross revenue was about 26,000. And I won't go through the details of every box, but the first column, I want to kind of explain what we're looking at so we can understand it moving forward.
46 million, right?
26 million, yes, I'm sorry, yeah. So $27 million in total operating revenue. And then operating expenses was 22 million. And again, the details are in the detail spreadsheet. There's some other operating expenses. So the net income that we had before any bond principal or interest payments was about $3.3 million. The bond interest does show up on our financial statements as about $4.8 million. But that is also, that's broken up between what we have paid the last few years and the capitalized interest that has been coming out of the bond proceeds. So I took that back out to give us more of an accurate representation of what's actually happening. And the interest is accounted for, that we paid is accounted for at the bottom of this column. So we'll get there in a minute. In order to take that net income and turn it into more of a cash number, we have to add back depreciation because depreciation is a non-cash item. Then we take out what we paid in our capital for FY25. That's about $780,000. And then we have another loan, Regions loan. We paid $464,000 in principal payments for the year. So that those show up on the balance sheet. They don't get embedded in that in the profit and loss. So that gives us our net cash income before bond principal and interest payments for FY 25 of 2.80 million. So that the next section is the bond payment analysis, how the cash is running through us to pay the bonds. As of the beginning of FY 25, we had about $656,000 in our bond payment account. We have a bond payment account and a bond reserve account. The bond reserve account, the next line is the $2 million that has been, per the IGA, put into an account to cover shortages in potential shortages in bond payments. The next line is how much we put in from our net operating income into the bond payments for the year, which gave us a total cash available for the bond payments in FY 25 of $5.3 million. The next section is each of the technically 5 bond payments, some taxable, some tax exempt bonds. We make interest payments in November, and then every May we make an interest and principal payment. So that's the 6 kind of subcategorized of how those bond payments work out. So we had about $2.2 million. I should put a subtotal here for next time, but we had about $2.2 million that we needed to pay in bond payments. So overall, that left a balance after we made those payments of $3.1 million between the 2 accounts. So we have the $2 million still in the bond debt reserve that's included in that $3 million. And then we have about 1.1 million, as an ending balance in our bond payment account.
Sorry,
So please.
the bond series 2023 A and B, why is there no November interest payment?
Because that was fully capitalized. So that was a fully capitalized interest payment. Great question. We have about $700,000 left in capitalized interest available to use. And so we've used up almost all of the capitalized interest funds that were available. And that's why the bond payments have gone up now this year to 5.2 million. And next year will be 6.5 million roughly. That's because of that ramping up that we did to give us time to get the arena up and running and as we're continuing to work towards the development. That's why it's so urgent to get these development funds in so that because that's baked into that timing of the capitalized.
Thank you.
Good question. Any other questions on this first column? All right, so the next 2 columns are what our current fiscal year, what we're looking at. So per your request last time, we've included the actuals year to date for FY 26 for the first quarter through September 2025. So the bottom line of net cash available after all the different adjustments is about $937,000 available for bond payments to put towards the bonds. Going back down to this bond payment cash flow analysis, that $3.1 million at the bottom, of column, that first column. Well, I do want to point out, I'm sorry, little side note. There's a bottom line, the cumulative paid in bond payments. So that's how much the Classic Center Authority has paid into the bond payments to date. So as of the end of fiscal year 2025, we had paid $3.8 million in total bond payments.
Annually or year to date?
Total. So from the beginning of the bonds, when we took them out in 2021, we've been making small
Okay.
payments. And that's the cumulative payment total bottom line. So back to this fiscal year 2026, the year-to-date numbers. So we have $4.4 million as of right now, as of the end of September, available for bond payments.
Excellent.
And then this FY 26 pro forma, that's the remaining October through the end of this fiscal year, FY 26. So we just skip over to the bond payment cash flow analysis. The total cash available at the end of the year for bond payments will be $7.4 million. We've just made our November payment, completely, fully paid. And we're working towards saving money and saving funds for the upcoming May payment, which is the bigger payment because it involves the principal.
Mm-hmm.
When all is said and done, after we make the bond payments, after we continue to make the contributions, there will be a total of $2.1 million left in both of those bond payment accounts as of the end of this year. And as of the end of FY 26, the Classic Center will have paid $9.1 million towards the bond payments.
Okay.
So any questions so far on the year to date?
I have one that's not bond related.
Yes.
Can you tell us what the Regions loan is being used for?
That was a loan. So we had a loan taken out previously for various projects, various things. And then when COVID hit, in order to open up cash flow, we refinanced that loan and took out an additional loan to refurbish the theater. We had saved money to do the theater. And so rather than use our savings during COVID, we refinanced loan, added a loan amount to pay for that project. And then that opened up that cash to keep us solvent through COVID.
If I may, if you think back to that time, interest rates were almost nothing. And so when we thought about renovating the theater, it was gonna have to all be done in pieces, parts. The chiller needed to be replaced, the seats needed to be replaced, all of that. And that was the only good thing of COVID, as far as I'm concerned. You know, we couldn't do anything. So the board made the decision, let's borrow the money at low interest rate, roll the loan in, and do everything all at one time.
Thank you.
Yeah.
The foundation, Classic Center Foundation, I thought that money was used for upkeeping the facility. Is that right?
No, it's one of their parts of why they exist is to try to keep the center looking good for years to come. And for example, John, when we do that, that is fundraising from the private sector.
Right.
So when we redid our ballroom flats, the community contributed $700,000 to help us with renovating the ballroom. But their main focus is really the arts, area of the arts. So they are giving back scholarship funding to students so we can continue to keep artists in this area and keep Athens being what it is. But it is a part of their mission is to raise funds, but there's no endowed account specifically for capital. The capital that has historically been poured back into the building has come from the net profits of the operation, which is, I'll say, very unusual. Most of these public buildings wind up relying back to the general fund when it comes to capital. But we're very proud that for over 30 years, everything that we've done, we've earned that money through the event load that we've done. It's kind of cool.
All right, any other questions on this so far? All right, so this is where it gets fun. FY 27, so there's a big caveat with any projection, right? Any kind of pro forma that's done there. This is based on the current understanding of how the market's going to be and how everything is currently looking, interest rates, current economic, there's no COVID part 2 built into these pro formas. So there's lots of caveats with these numbers. They are best estimates based on current knowledge. Projections, yeah. So FY 27, we're currently working on our FY 27 budget, and so we're currently in these numbers right now. So we've done our best to try to project out what we anticipate FY 27 coming out to be. And things are looking good so far. So bottom line, for the net cash available for the bond payments, we have about $4.8 million. Continuing down, so the debt payment fund, at the end of FY 26, we anticipate having about $145,000, so it's mostly used up. Bond debt reserve still fully funded at $2 million. Then the cash that we're able to contribute of $4.8 million will give us $6.9 million towards the bond payments. And the bond payments for FY 27 are about $6.5 million. So that leaves us about $463,000. So at that point, that's when we would need to tap into that bond debt reserve, that $2 million that's been put aside. FY 28, again, we're going to continue to grow. Bottom line, at the end of the day, unless we get development fund prior to that, we do anticipate at that point going negative. That's when the bond payments become more than we can currently handle, and we go about $1.2 million under. Then it continues on through the remaining years. I've added in FY 29, added $1.5 million in developer fees for 29 and 30. And that actually starts to bring us back out of the negative and then in FY 30, we are able to start refunding the bond debt service of $2 million. Because the goal would be to refund that and then move forward with that $2 million back as a reserve. Any questions?
Is the foundation money available for bond payment?
No, I don't believe that's a way that they can support us. They can support us more in like actually maintaining the building, but, and I don't know, we'd have to talk to a bond attorney about that, but I think there's probably legal, limitations to that, but I'm not an expert, so I don't know.
I mean, you could try to raise money from the private sector just for bond payments. They set up an endowed amount of money, but I will tell you, that's not a sexy thing.
I was just gonna say.
Yeah.
The endowed
Go fund the
accounts,
classic Saturday arena.
the endowed accounts that are set aside, there is a, legal document that says what those, revenues are set aside for. And we can't spend the principal, we can only spend the interest in those accounts.
They're restricted.
And only restricted for what they were set aside for.
But it's almost like, this might not be the right term, but it's almost like an in-kind contribution, because those are all things that don't have to come from another one of these categories,
Correct.
right? I mean, that's keeping all that
It's
going.
buying art
with-
from regional artists and put up in a raffle.
Well,
And it's giving out scholarships and it's doing things like that. I will say the foundation did help us a lot when we were building the arena. They raised $5.7 million from the citizens of Athens for very specific things. There were
Yeah.
3 very specific things. And people did want to give to those. It was important to them and they did. So they've done a lot of good work, but
But again, it's helping in the big picture. And that's
Well,
it's worthy of us to keep that in mind, that those are things that we're not having to
It opens up.
worry about. Well, yeah, it opens it up and it's almost as if it keeps it off our plate.
Thinking about your hotel tax projections, do y'all keep an eye on plans review and what's happening when, just thinking like, there's several projects that are in the mix right now that may either remove or add hotel rooms. Do y'all look to that sort of stuff when you're looking for these projections out, especially for the hotel tax?
We do our best.
Yeah.
I'm sure, I know that Katie Williams is involved in keeping an eye on those very heavily. We try to be conservative as well in these, and so anticipating too much revenue based on additional hotel rooms and whatnot, we want to be careful not to over project. We want to be very conservative in the revenues and very aggressive in the expenses. And so we're trying to.
if I may, usually budget wise, we take our hotel tax cue from the finance department, who does look at all of that. And they say for this next year, we believe this will be your hotel tax.
Okay.
And then from there, moving forward to the fiscal years that they haven't projected yet, we just take a small annual.
Right, so we are not, when we say they're gonna break ground on where the original Holiday Inn was, so we don't project what's not being done. But in our mind, we know that something that's being renovated will be back online and something is gonna be groundbreaking next. But finance is still within the window projecting from where we are, right? And
I
then
think they
those,
project out 2 fiscal years, right?
yeah, but it's at the rate of use, not, they don't have a crystal ball when something.
And it's based on existing rooms, not
Yeah, that's
theoretical
what-
rooms.
That's right.
Usage of what we have.
It's been oftentimes where people have said, we're gonna build a hotel next year, and that becomes 5 years later. So I think what Jane's saying is we're being more conservative in our projections than.
No, yeah, I'm hearing that, and the same with finance, because you just said you're getting these projections from finance.
But I will say the long and the short of this is the answer to paying back the bonds and not getting into this sticky wicket, I think, is to make Accenture very clear about when these things are. And I do think that there might be 1 or 2 parcels that could move forward faster than others. And I think all of us keeping this in mind will help us do that.
So bringing this to the table and saying, hey, here's our cost coverage need.
It, well,
Yeah.
it-
I guess
that's
back
why,
to John's master plan and picking more of that.
Yeah, this will be mine.
The other thing I want you all to know that I think is really important is right now, we're up to 3.9 million a year just in naming rights, selling of suites, marketing agreements with the arena only, which is breaking all kinds of records and far beyond what we anticipated. And I say that only to say how supportive the corporate market in and around Athens has been with the new arena. And if you remember, originally, Jamie was projecting that there'd be a shortfall in 27. And because we've done so well on those things in food and beverage, we've actually been able to 58, which is really helpful, I think, as we're trying to develop this out. Gives us almost another year.
and to Paul's point, if we start developing smaller portions now and start thinking, even in FY 27, this upcoming fiscal year, 750,000 for 2 years makes up that difference of 1.2 million. And so if we can start as soon as possible to get this development going, it really just makes this more manageable.
I mean, I think I know the answer to this question about you guys, and it's just just to clarify. And then looking at the first quarter, revenues are about 19% of the overall revenue for the year. I'm assuming that's because it's summer. The other three quarters of the year are all
Easier.
busy.
Typically, Jamie, correct me if I'm wrong, but when we finish our fiscal year, the part that rolls to the bottom line is somewhere between 10 and 12%.
Yeah.
What we do. And if you look at the industry does not usually break even or go
Yeah.
negative.
Yeah.
Food and beverage, then, typically, and the amount of shows that are coming in, and the good shows that are coming in, are big enough, a difference, building, things like.
Versus the next three quarters are 24 million. So it just makes sense that the summer is really the smaller. Gotcha.
And it's still busier than it used to be. During the summer,
Oh,
like about 4 or 5 years ago, well, pre-COVID, sorry, let's be.
Yeah.
I mean, the summer was, we were struggling, like pitching to find money to pay payroll, we had it, but now it's.
Okay.
So tell us just kind of what we'll be doing next time and then we'll look
Yes.
for a date.
So, I'm going to make the edits to this job scope of work. I'm gonna run it back through Blake Shelton and Judd just to bring them both back into the loop. Then I'll share it over with Accenture and working with our purchasing department, we will work on the pricing stage. I think that our next meeting will have to do with the pricing and the contract. Yes,
The one we've been waiting.
Yeah.
Mhm.
that stuff. And then contracting will ensue. I've gotten some of those documents from purchasing already and have an idea of how to proceed with that. My guess is for our next meeting, we probably will want to look at maybe the second week of December.
How's the 10th work for folks? Wednesday, the 10th?
David, aren't we out of town?
Yeah,
Okay,
we're gonna be in DC.
Okay,
everyone loves a Friday meeting, Friday,
Well, if they're
December
out the
12th.
10th, they're probably out the
Oh,
12th.
the whole week,
That's
okay.
fine.
you do the whole
Okay.
week.
8 or 9.
What's,
Or Monday, the 15th, or Tuesday, the 16th?
Stay away from Tuesdays,
Okay,
please.
oh yeah, that's true.
I could do,
17th?
I've got a hard stop at 10:30 on the 15th, but I could do 9 o'clock.
On the 15th,
Same with the 17th.
I've got a 10 to 11 o'clock, but otherwise I'm open.
Monday the 15th?
On the Monday, December 15th.
And is the objective of that meeting is to consider, to look at pricing or,
Price.
and all that?
Oh yeah, we'll be looking at pricing and I believe we will. I'll make these edits today, send them.
Wait, let's go back to the 15th. What about the 8th or the 17th? The 15th is a little tricky for me, but I don't know what Zwern's doing. Are we? Is
Oh,
it?
yeah.
You want to look at 9 o'clock on the 8th? Y'all still
I'm
have that?
Yeah, we're
selfishly
like-
nervous about getting into the holidays on the 15th because everyone, little people start
Let's
getting out
maybe
of
look
school.
late, but they're gone the 10th through the 12th.
Yeah, is the 8th gonna be too ambitious to
I think
have
it will be
meet?
too ambitious to.
Yeah, I think we're
probably
working on
have to
making
be
sure we have
meeting.
what we need for the pricing and the contract. And,
I think
we've
if
got a
that-
holiday, next week's
Oh,
holiday.
yeah, okay.
Mhm.
Did you say
So-
17th?
What about 17th?
We were looking at the 15th. Oh, you said
I can't do
15th problematic.
I can do 17th, 9 AM.
That cuts into Katie's meeting, but she'll just have to.
Yeah,
That's kind of just
we can move.
replicating what we're doing now, the Wednesday after our meeting, which
Yeah.
we did it.
Everybody okay plugging on 9 to 10 on the 17th?
Mhm.
All right. Arena
You
District.
send me an invite.
17, 9.
Could I ask another question?
Absolutely.
How does the pricing kind of work? I've heard John ask a
Yeah,
question in and around.
I don't know the answer. I'm gonna be learning that.
I think we'll end up, I mean,
That is
let's plan on having just an offline meeting after you and Blake Sharpton and Judd meet with Accenture.
Okay.
Yeah, so we'll do some planning and we'll get out information to everybody well in advance. So that way you can see sort of what that model looks like. So you come into that next meeting with some information in hand.
Right, and you're gonna have what we have available.
Understand.
I'm naive to know even what we can afford,
Yeah,
much less what they're asking, but you've got that background.
a little bit, but
That's
Blake's
more
got
than I
an
have.
enormous amount.
Yeah.
Part of the reason is, as you know, we're finalizing our budget for the 27 year now.
We are too.
And this will be a significant piece of that. And so I think it's only fair that I share with whomever is going to negotiate what I think is actually available or that we could do. Because I know we're going to be responsible for paying a portion of that.
All right,
And
we
the bells
will
are ringing.
be talking.
Good, right?
All right, so we've got a date, we got a time, all right.
Motion to adjourn.
I will gladly second that.
All right, all in favor of adjournment?
Aye.
All right, we kept it to an hour. Good job, everybody.
All right.